Welcome to the Look Good, Move Well podcast.
I have repositioned my microphone slightly, so if you are watching this on the tube of you, then and part of my face is obscured by this microphone, I apologize. Speaking of the tube of you, Satya, what are people that are listening not seeing that's on our desk here?
Yeah, we're so excited. We got our plaque for passing 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thanks to Nate, mostly because Nate has been crushing it, doing our edits on our YouTube channel.
That's real.
Yeah.
Yep. We went from not having a steady stream of YouTube content edits to having a very steady stream, thanks to Nate. So in 2021, we really made a big push, and that's specifically on the Marcus Philly channel, which is a group effort for sure. And if you're listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, you're watching it on the Functional Bodybuilding channel. So perhaps you're not subscribed to the Marcus Philly channel. Get over there, hit that like, subscribe, get all up in the comments, help us push that. And then also, if you're listening to this and you're not a subscriber to the Functional Bodybuilding channel, please head over there too. We'd like to get another plaque. That'd be pretty sick to have double plaque action up here.
Double plaque.
Double plaque? Sounds like a dentist nightmare.
Dentist, I was going to say.
I went to the dentist 2 weeks ago, got a cleaning. I go twice a year like you're supposed to. Get my teeth, polished up.
Right.
What is it like? I never have issues, and then like I go to the dentist, and then like a week or two later, I got an issue. Freaking filling, I think, fell out of my tooth like 2 weeks after 3 days after I went. And
were they doing that thing where they like poke everything with the metal poker?
There was a little bit of poking. There was a little poking. There was also a very, very they said I was due for like the 5-year X-ray
the
workup. There were like 21 images that they took of my teeth.
Dang.
Which took 30 minutes to get all, Anyway. All right, well, let's dive into it.
Okay.
What did you have for carbs today?
Let's see. What did I have? I'm trying to remember what I even ate for breakfast. That was a while ago. I had a little sprinkling of granola, and I had some berries. So that was a little bit of carbs with my breakfast. I had that with cottage cheese this morning for breakfast.
Yeah.
And then just now I had an orange and a few carrots, and I had some bison.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to a great question to ask people periodically, just to engage on are you aware of what you're having in your diet that constitutes different macronutrients?
Yeah.
Yep. My breakfast, I had some whole milk, has some carbs in it, some Greek yogurt, has a little carbs in it. My breakfast is not super carb heavy usually, and then we just finished up some workouts, and I had 2 bananas. That was carby. Yeah. And I had, those are my carbs for the day. And I got some avocados and grapefruits in the fridge for a little bit. I had some honey. Had a little bit of honey. Yeah. Also for lunch. So those are my sources so far.
Yeah, I forgot the carbs in my cottage cheese, but that's also a good point. There are carbs in dairy products.
For sure.
I just think of it as more like, that's kind of where I got my protein this morning, and this is kind of where I got my carb.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's not like a dense source of carbs. Yeah. Unless you're having non-fat milk, which I know you're not doing that.
Nah.
I'm not messing around with that. I let off at that because we're going to talk about carbs today. We're going to go on a carb bonanza. We dropped an email yesterday that talked a fair amount about carbohydrates. So I think that we got some good questions from it. I've got a couple questions here, particularly that I'd like to read off, and these are just some user-generated content.
Yeah, and one thing before we dive in quickly, our email newsletter list is not the kind of list that you sign up for and we just spam you endlessly with things that you don't want. It is really chock full of great information, and from time to time we'll ask questions and invite people to write in with their replies and the questions that they're having and thoughts. So we're here, we're listening, we're reading all the replies, and the newsletter is a great way to interact with us and get some of your questions answered as well.
Yeah, imagine that. It's not old-fashioned because it's still tech-based, but it's a a mailer or a newsletter that arrives and then you respond to it, and it's like there's an interaction via like, text and mail exchange versus like the immediate of like social, like gotta get, so just another way to interact with us, which I appreciate. Satya puts a tremendous amount of care into it, and we'd like to hear from you. Okay, I'm going to read something off.
Great.
I'm trying to lose fat. What is the best way when it comes to protein and fat? I know we're talking carbs today, but let me continue on. Hey, Marcus, what's your advice for someone trying to lose body fat when it comes to carbohydrates? That was the actual question. I see that you stick to more fruits for carbs instead of starches like potatoes or rice. I've always believed that you can lose weight without having to cut out food groups, but I've been having a really hard time losing weight, and I'm really starting to think that I might be slightly insulin resistant. Any advice would help.
This would be good to answer also because there was another question I remember that someone wrote in with, which was kind of the opposite, where I believe that they were trying to put on mass and wondering what role carbs play in that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think the question is really first and foremost, like, how do I lose weight? And, losing weight is, I wrote this in the newsletter, and it kind of came out today as well, a checklist. Actually, no. I mentioned it in the YouTube episode that's coming out this Sunday.
Yeah.
What's the recipe for actually putting on muscle or losing body fat?
Yeah.
It is in construction quite simple. In execution, it's very challenging, and that's why we have a massive industry dedicated to trying to teach people or help guide people to better lifestyle choices and habits. But for this individual who's asking, like, the question is, I'm having a hard time with weight loss or fat loss. How should I approach my carbs? And the question, and that's like, carbs maybe are third or fourth down the priority list. How do you lose body fat, or how do you lose weight? It's a 3-part recipe, because when people say I want to lose weight, they actually want to lose body fat. They, because you can lose 10 pounds of muscle and lose no fat, and that's considered losing weight. And if you look at yourself in the mirror at the end of that, you're not going to like what you see. You're not going to have as much lean muscle mass. You're not going to function as well, and you're not going to be as metabolically healthy if you just lose muscle. But if you lose 10 pounds of fat and you lose 0 muscle, you're going to look incredible compared to where you started. You're going to feel as functional, if not more, because now you're able to lift as much and move as much without as much weight on your body. And metabolically, you'll be very healthy because you'll have sustained the portion of your body that's like doing really good metabolic activity and work. So in order to do that, lose fat, you have to be in a calorie deficit. You have to eat less than you're expending. And that could come from any source of nutrient. Calories are calories, whether they come from fat, carbs, or protein. That has to be acknowledged. The second part of that is that in order to maintain muscle, we need to provide an adequate amount of protein. So the first macronutrient that I'm even mentioning is protein, because it's most important when it comes to sustaining muscle mass in the event of calorie deficit. So number 1, calories in is less than calories out. Number 2, adequate protein. How much is adequate? We like to talk about the 1 gram per pound of body weight. That's kind of a general starting point, but there's some wiggle room there.
Yeah. And
then the third part is you have to do some resistance training, because the resistance training is what stimulates your body to say, oh, hold on to the muscle. This is all just a preservation of muscle method. Calories below, if you get into a deficit, you'll lose body fat. But you don't want to lose muscle mass too. So we do the second 2 parts of the equation to trick your body into keeping muscle. Because when you're in a deficit, it wants to get rid of kind of everything that's like, it's like we got to conserve energy, and muscle is very energetically costly. So as you as I just said, like I didn't even get into talking about carbs because they don't really matter in that general equation. Now, of course, we got to end up talking about carbs at some point because they add calories to the mix. So does fat. Fat adds calories to the mix.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do about those things? And where should you get them from? What source? And this is where like people start to fall into these different camps. Like I do the low carb camp. I do like low fat. I do this. I do that. I do keto, intermittent fasting, carnivore, animal-based, plant-based. It doesn't matter. They're all effective and they can all be ineffective. If you follow any diet and you break those 3 rules that I talked about, you won't see the results you want. If you follow any diet and you follow all 3 of those rules we talked about, you'll see results. And so you're always going to find somebody that's doing it the right way and doing it the wrong way. And somebody's like, I'm doing plant-based and I'm crushing it. I'm doing carnivore and I'm crushing it. I did plant-based, it didn't work. I did carnivore and it didn't work. It's like they all work and they all cannot work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just I'm sorry to take up so much space there, but I just wanted to set some context for, how do we even approach answering some of these more nuanced questions about macros like carbs, where are the best places to get them from, and so forth.
Right. And we haven't even talked about food quality yet, because that's also quite important in terms of where you get your calories from and the effect that they have on your physiology. Very
true. Yeah. And I believe, we talk about starting with food quality, but in reality, that equation that I talked about, I didn't mention food quality.
Right.
It's actually not, you can bypass food quality and still lose body fat.
Yes.
And the question really becomes, losing body fat is one thing. Losing body fat and keeping it off for 1 year is another thing. Then you get into the next benchmark, which is, can you lose body fat? Let's say 10% of your total weight, keep it off for 3 years. The number of people that can do that is like less than 3% of all dieters. So you start to really see that the ability to sustain these goals that people have is the huge separator. It's the thing that makes you like, how many businesses succeed out there? Less than 5%. You want to be one of the 5%ers that succeed in weight loss? You got your work cut out for you, because a lot of people can do it in 3 months or under a year, but they can't do it a long time. So we start to say, well, what are the next tiers? After those 3 rules, great. What else should we be focused on? Well, we should be focused on anything that allows you to do something consistently.
Yeah.
And that's where food quality comes in.
Yep.
That's where a conversation about carbohydrates comes in. That's where a conversation about fasting or, keto lifestyle or plant-based or, whatever people choose that say it's working for them. And look, if someone says, hey, this is working for me, you should evaluate with a very, very microscopic lens. Like, okay, let me look at the details. You've been doing it for 3 months. You just said it was working. I know that that's easy-ish to do.
Yeah.
Have you been doing it for 5 years? The only thing I can say that I've done consistently for 5+ years is I've eaten my body weight in protein and I've maintained my caloric balance.
Yeah.
And I've done it with low carb,
yes.
high carb, carnivore, more vegetables, less vegetables,
vertical
all these
diet,
all the different ways.
Yeah,
I've done it all these different ways.
Yeah.
Are there some things that I've learned about each of those that I'm like, oh, I value that.
Yeah.
Definitely. And they have started to shape what I do the majority of my time. But make no mistake about it. It's like, I've still been, in caloric balance. And when I got really shredded, I was in a deficit. I wasn't in a surplus and I lost a ton of body fat. I was in a deficit.
Yeah.
And, I ate my body weight in grams of protein. I actually ate 1.3 grams of protein per pound of body weight pretty consistently for the last 4 to 5 years, And so, and then I train. I train my muscles, plenty of intensity and volume.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about when you and I first started working together, you were really big on the white rice. You would make just giant pots of white rice in the kitchen. You were big on the protein recovery thing, shakes that you don't have so much now, or you have a different one now, but your nutrition looked very, very different than what I see you eating down in the kitchen every day now.
Yep.
And you've gone through lots of different nutrition explorations over the years. But if you look at photos and videos of you on Instagram, it's like 2017 Marcus, jacked and performing well, like 2022, like same thing.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some changes to my body that have happened over the past 5 years. And I think the most significant, or if you look at 2017 to now, I'm not performing in the same way. I'm performing well, but I'm not trying to meet the intensity demands. And and we've talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
That was a big shift in why carbohydrates played less of a role. And, liquid nutrition was a big part of the equation because it provided a lot of carbohydrates for recovery, but it also provided a way to get in calories without having to fill up my stomach because I was going to train twice a day or train 3 times a day. So, but the rules were still kind of similar. And I think that's important for people to understand. So back to the question that we got, it was like, I'm having a hard time losing body fat.
Yeah.
And the question is like, I think I might be insulin resistant. That's a big jump to make, like going from like, I was losing body fat and I stalled out, I might be metabolically unhealthy. I think it's important to go back to the equation because the equation is still at play here. And where you're getting your carbohydrates from is not, there's certainly food choices and quality of food that can impact your metabolic health. But if you're training and you're eating mostly, whole foods, whether it's rice or a piece of fruit, that is a totally different category than like I'm eating processed refined sugars, seed oils, bags of chips, takeout fast food, lots of sodas. These are different categories.
Sure.
You're not like, if you have a diet of like white potatoes that you cook yourself and meat and vegetables and almonds, like it's less likely. I don't know that that's what's going on. I think what's likely going on is that we've gotten a little bit lax about tracking that calorie equation. Maybe the protein has dropped, or maybe your training has suffered and is not as adequate. You're not, the training hasn't offset the calorie balance equation. And then, so we can maybe keep going and talk about like, well, why would carbohydrates be, what do you think the next question is? Because you also said there was another question that came in that was kind of the opposite of this one.
Yeah. Right.
What was that one?
So I think what we're getting closer towards is, well, first of all, I think it's also helpful to just revisit some of the common mistakes that people can tend to make when they're trying to track their energy balance, because getting that number right can make a really huge impact on whether you gain or lose weight. And so if you are off a little bit in your calculations, if you've maybe gone to a macro calculator and you've overestimated your activity level, then that can throw things off. So I just want to mention that briefly.
Yeah, actually, can I add one more thing to that?
Yeah.
I think it's super important. It's like the calorie calculator told me that I burn 2,500 calories a day. So now I'm eating 2,200 calories. So I'm in a deficit of 300, which is a great starting place. That's 10 to 12%. You do that for a month, 2 months, and you lose body fat. Well, we have metabolic adaptations that happen in the body. Your brain, your body, your whole being doesn't want to keep losing weight forever. It doesn't want you to be in a deficit forever. So what it's going to do is, you're only eating 2,200 calories. It's going to slowly start to decrease your overall energy expenditure. And the way it does that is it slows down certain metabolic processes. Like, this is what people call slowing down your metabolism. It also just kind of generally makes you a little bit more tired. So you don't give it that extra effort in the gym. Makes you a little bit more tired, so you sit down more during the day instead of stand up and walk around. Kind of like just makes you sluggish. And then next thing you know, after 2 months, you lost weight. But now 2,200 calories is your maintenance. And you've plateaued.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, do I need to go keto now? Do I need to do something different? Right. It's like, no. You need to either lower your calories more to 1,800 to get back into a deficit, which is one way to do it, but that will, again, keep driving that number down, and eventually you'll plateau again.
Yep.
Or at 2,200, you need to add in more activity. Okay, I've slowed down. I need to add in a 30-minute walk a day. Okay, is that sustainable? It could be for a little bit longer. But what most people need to do is they reach a plateau after 2 to 3 months of dieting. And now it's like, guess what? Time to replenish. Let's bring your calories back up to 2,500. Get the metabolism going. Get your energy back. Start to feel that inspiration to do the extra set in the gym. Like, just generally start getting yourself going again. This is what happens to me in the wintertime.
Yeah.
I increase my calories. I get myself moving again. I start to like do more. And then the springtime comes around. I'm like, I can, drop it 200, 300, 400 calories. I can kind of lean out. I have energy. My hormones are feeling good. And I'm like ready to get shredded for, the nice weather, right? More sunshine, more outdoor, more active. That's just a natural way to do it. You're not going to stay in a deficit for the whole year and lose body fat forever, unless you started with a massive amount of weight to lose, a massive amount of body fat, in which case you potentially could do that because your body now has endless stores of energy in the form of body fat to potentially burn.
Yep. Okay, so let's say you've gotten that number correct for you right now. And let's say that you're eating adequate protein in comparison to your body weight. Then I think the next question is, what role does the carbohydrate part of the equation play in either gaining or losing weight or muscle mass?
Well, the fact that it's a carb versus a fat does nothing. In order to, in order to gain weight or to lose weight, you need to adjust this energy. Carbs per gram of carbohydrate carry 4 calories per gram. Fat per gram carry 9 calories. So we really can just manipulate those things to try and help you achieve the surplus of energy or the deficit of energy that you need. If you look at if you're trying to be in a deficit, one of the challenges is feeling full. Because when you're in a deficit, eventually you start to feel hungry. It just is inevitable. Like, nobody who's like eating in a deficit feels satiated indefinitely. Eventually they're like, I'm fucking hungry.
Yeah.
So what are ways that we can trick our body into feeling full? Gastric distension, stomach expanding. When your stomach expands, this is like a stretch reflex. It's like, hey, I'm full. Well, 100 calories of a certain type of carbohydrate, like vegetable, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, that takes up a big volume of food. You eat a whole plate of broccoli and you're going to get a couple hundred calories.
Yeah.
If you eat a whole plate of almonds, you're going to get a couple thousand calories. Right? And so the same volume of food is vastly different in terms of calories. So if you're really in this for changing your energy equation, a lot of people will gravitate towards voluminous foods, which tend to be fibrous. Carbohydrates are a great way to do that. And fibrous carbohydrates have lower calories as a result. So that's one way you can think about, well, how do calories play a role? Does this get me to eat more or less calories? Does the carbohydrate or the fat get me to eat more or less? Certain types of carbs can help with that, but certain types of fat can help with that. If you have a plate of broccoli or, a serving of vegetables by itself, you might feel full for 30 minutes, but then you're really hungry because it didn't have a lot of calories in it. Versus if you have that plate of vegetables with a little bit of fat on it, that fat is satiating. It tells your brain, hey, I'm good. I'm chill. Like, Those fats are going to digest a little bit slowly. They're going to provide you energy over a longer period of time. So fats can be satiating. So again, I'm just sort of setting it up, but I'll give some specific examples. If you're trying to put on muscle, you need to get into this calorie surplus. And just as you know, most people who approach dieting are looking to lose body fat relative to how many people are out there trying to gain muscle. But people who are trying to gain muscle are often just as frustrated and challenged by this process. People are like, God, it'd be so easy to gain weight. It's like, you're right. It's easy to gain fat. It's not easy to gain muscle, because to gain muscle, you got to go train hard and you got to eat hard. You got to eat huge. Well, so what's a way to use carbohydrates to get more calories in? Well, carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates like sugars, refined, easier to digest, those are like, people call them empty calories, because they're just calories that don't have a lot of fiber. They don't have a lot of nutrients necessarily attached to them, and they don't like sit in your stomach for very long. They just pass right, they get absorbed right away. And it's like, drink a whole glass of orange juice, like in 20 minutes, you're ready to drink a whole nother glass of orange juice. And, certain carbs can be really easy to get calories from and not fill you up. And so that's a good way to use carbohydrates, like a lot of white rice. I need to get calories, and I don't want to pound back 4 plates of broccoli. Right. That's the way to do it.
Yep.
And if I can get white rice versus oatmeal, like oatmeal's got more fiber in it. It's going to require a bit more of my digestive system to break down. It's going to be slower. Like, people talk about like the oatmeal sticks to my stomach and it makes me feel full longer. It's like, they're just thinking that, but it has there's reality to like, I feel satiated on oatmeal, but if I eat a bowl of white rice, I just want more white rice. Yep. So if you're trying to get jacked, and you want to build muscle and you need more calories, guess what? Eat the white rice. Yeah. And a trick and a hack that, Stan Efferding talks about, who's a vertical diet guy, take some dextrose powder, which is basically sugar, straight glucose, and pour it onto your white rice. And it actually is going to activate all these digestive enzymes in your mouth and your stomach to make you digest it really fast so that you actually want to eat more of it. And this
sounds good.
It sounds good. It's like sushi rice, It's like sugary rice. It's like, yummy. If you want to get jacked, just eat a bunch of sushi rice every day, and train and eat your protein.
Nice.
But somebody who wants to get big or jacked and build muscle and be in a surplus, you try and eat more protein and fat and keep your carbs super low. Protein and fat are very satiating. So it's really hard to eat 6,000 calories of just protein and fat and low carb. Yeah. You'd have to eat 5 pounds of meat and 4 bars of butter and I know it sounds like, oh God, I wish I could eat butter. And
when you do that day after day, it's really hard to sustain.
It's super hard to sustain.
Yeah.
So that's where people love to use carbs as an anabolic engine tool, because it just helps them jack up their calories a lot. And so when I'm not trying to put on mass, if I'm in a maintenance phase, if I'm just trying to stay lean, carbs is something that for me, I tend to gravitate towards sources that might have a little bit more volume to them, maybe a little bit more fiber, maybe a little bit more nutrients, digest a little more slowly. And I just generally keep them moderate. And it's not to say you can't lean out with carbs. You certainly can. It just depends on what kind of carbs you're going to have. And again, if you don't have if you have really great self-control, you can eat your protein that you need each day, and then all the rest of your calories could come from ice cream and you could still get ripped. Yep. It doesn't matter. It's just that, I don't do well eating a little bit of ice cream each day. But perhaps if I ate it every day, it would be a lot easier, because I'm I don't need to go hog wild today. I'm going to have it tomorrow. I'm going to have it the next day. It doesn't,
Yep.
So did that get at that kind of the answer to that question, you think?
So if I'm just trying to sum up what I think I've heard you say, it's that it's really about the number on your energy balance primarily. Then you got to hit your protein. Then manipulating the carbohydrates and the fats is really about what helps you feel good, what gives you energy, what is sustainable, and moves you towards your particular goal.
Yeah, and absolutely. And then other things that we mentioned were food quality. Things that we have not mentioned are the micronutrient and bioavailability of
Oh,
know,
yeah.
in
I want to get
foods.
into this.
Yeah, this might be the next episode. We have not talked about digestive health.
Yep.
And, the question about, am I insulin resistant? Or, is my metabolic health poor? And food choice can absolutely impact that.
Yeah.
You could be at a healthy body weight, but you're eating a lot of processed foods that have pretty messed up ingredients in them that could be causing some metabolic derangement in your body, which could be a problem. There's plenty of, like fit, healthy looking people who have some pretty bad blood chemistries and just internal physiology going on because they're not really optimizing good food quality. They're also not moving that much. And, when you see somebody that like generally has a acceptable, or visually appealing shape, but you don't really see underneath the hood. You can't tell, like, do they have a lot of muscle mass? So they, this person could be eating a lot of processed carbohydrates and fats and very little protein, but they've got the calorie equation down. They're just eating really the wrong types of foods. That can get into some problems as well. So if these questions are coming from a kind of a vanity aesthetics perspective, which we're all for answering and supporting. But on the health side of the equation, this is where I have really gone deeper and deeper into like the food quality, the sourcing of ingredients,
right,
how I'm preparing it, and getting more nuanced about like, well, where am I getting my carbs from? Am I eating a lot of vegetables? Am I eating a lot of starches? Am I eating a lot of this? Because I had my first 6-pack and ripped at 19 years old, and I felt like shit.
Yeah.
And I was in pain, and I got injured, and it wasn't a very sustainable lifestyle. I was depressed. I mean, there was all kinds of problems that came from it. So I was like, okay, well, Fruit Loops, cottage cheese, egg whites, soggy salads, American cheese, melted onto spelt bread, and 2 protein shakes and yogurt, non-fat yogurt every day, and chicken breast and canned tuna.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not the business. That's not what I want to do. That's shit like quality. It's just shit. I could replicate the same kind of energy balance equation with a totally different profile of food and completely feel different and function better.
Yep.
And still look great. And maybe I'm not as shredded, or maybe I'm more, it doesn't matter. It's like, I chose that I wanted to chase that. And I'm continuing to aim to chase that at different stages of life. So this is the ongoing exploration, but I don't, if I want to look good, if at the end of the winter, I'm like, I don't see as many, defined lines in my muscles, and I'm like, I don't think to myself like, man, I must be more like, something must have changed with my physiology. It's like, no,
right.
I have not followed the equation as precisely as I have in the past. And that's why I'm 2 to 3% body fat higher than I was 4 months ago.
Yep.
And so I got to just go back to basics. And that's where we started today with the basics. Once you get through the basics and you're nailing that, we can troubleshoot it in the ways that we did by, hey, let's bump our calories up. Let's get back into maintenance. Let's really start to rev things up. And then let's start to be thoughtful about how we, decrease our calories if we want to lose body fat. What's helping you to do that? Is it focusing on just eating fruit? Is it focusing on eating more white rice? Is it not even bothering with carbs and you're like, I'm going to focus on protein and fat because that works for me? You know, are you a carb cycler? Are you a keto cycler? Are you low fat, high? Like, remember, these are just tools to help you achieve that state of energy balance, adequate protein, and then getting in the right training volume that you want. And the choice in carbohydrates might impact point number 3.
Yeah.
I don't eat carbs. My training sucks. And then everything falls apart. Oh, I bumped up my carbs. My training's great. I'm starting to feel good. It's like, hey, there you go.
Yep.
This is great. Okay. Solid session. Good conversation. Any take-home thoughts or last words?
Last thought is just that you may never need to worry about carbs. I think sometimes if you just get that energy balance equation correct and get protein and water, have some generally good quality, the rest will kind of fall into place. So you don't necessarily need to sweat it.
Yeah. And that's what we laid out in the email, a 4-point checklist for you to basically, hopefully arrive at your ideal body that serves your needs without having to get too detailed.
Yeah.
That's why we started this year with practical protein.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just kind of starting to touch on these other areas.
But if you do need to get more detailed, we will have that information as well.
Yep. Okay. See you very soon, everyone.
See ya.